What an Australian Grand Prix that was.
Hell yeah.
Welcome back to the Ready, Steady, Go podcast. I am Joey. This is Rob. How did you enjoy the race, Rob?
It was eventful, to say the least. I didn't fall asleep, so that's always a good sign.
What time did the race end? What time did the race end by you?
Oh, fuck, probably like 1 a.m.
Yeah, no, that was a 2:15 for me, buddy.
Yeah.
And I had a lot to do on Sunday, so it was kind of not fun to wake up the next morning and be like, oh man, the race was over.
You know, like another fucking red flag.
Yeah. But overall, good race. Lando Norris gets the victory. He dominated that race. I don't know how anyone's gonna, just going into this week, like coming into the next few races, knowing that teams need these upgrades to come to the car soon. I don't know what they have for McLaren. McLaren pretty much they pulled away with enough of a gap to say, okay, now you can start racing.
Right. And that was like, what, in the middle of the race too? Like before the storm came again?
It was, I think,
I don't remember.
Somewhere around lap 20, I think lap 28 is when they said, okay, go for it now.
Mm-hmm.
And then all hell broke loose not long after.
Yeah.
So good back and forth with Oscar and Lando trying to get that crazy save coming out of turn 12 by both McLarens when it was raining. Let's get to it. Let's go in order of everything that happened, because it was eventful even before the race started.
Yeah. It was raining during the recon lap.
So before that, F2 was scheduled to race their feature race for the weekend. I had texted you. It was like around 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock local time, which is Central Time, that they were getting ready to run. They were doing some parade laps.
And they were running short.
Some laps behind the safety car, and then they get called to pit lane. All cars are going down pit lane, and then the FIA race control says, this race is canceled. No points for you, no race for you. We need to keep y'all safe for the next race, which I don't know where F2 is racing next. I'll have to take a look at that in a minute. So going in, I told you, like, hey, F2 got canceled. I started thinking, like, how is this going to affect this race?
Right.
So watching some of the pre-race, it was very windy. A little bit of rain, on and off throughout the pre-race. Get to the grid. You have some cars are on wets, some cars are on inters. I thought personally it should have been, I would have put wet tires on to start just to see, because you got what you got. The next time you make a pit stop, you're going to put slicks on anyway. You get a little bit more of that water to dissipate. That's why I'm not a Formula One driver.
True, but the wets will help disperse all the water off sooner.
The problem is those don't have the grip that the inters do. Inters don't really have that much grip to begin with, but the wets have zero grip. Like, those are impossible to race on tires. There's a reason that if they do a safety car start, that you have to have wets on, because you can't do a standing start with wets. So you get to, all right, formation lap time. Here we go. Cars start rolling off. Everything's fine and dandy. Isaac Hadjar comes off of turn 1, spins it, hits the wall.
Breaks the rear wing. Totally
broke the rear wing. Probably messed up something in the drivetrain. They shut the car off, abort the start, and he had a moment of emotion. I feel for him. It's
100%.
You build yourself up to get to this moment, and it's just that's it. That's your day's done. And honestly, if I'm him, I take, you look back at it and you say, well, it can't get any worse. It only goes up from here, and he has the talent to be able to improve and do better and make it. He almost made it to Q3 in his debut. One of the faster rookies in the field. I think he'll be fine.
I think so too. I I don't know. I'm a little over Marco's comments. I mean, saying that's embarrassing because he's emotional and the fact that he doesn't even get to truly start his first F1 race because he spun out. It's callous. I think the old man needs to just kind of take a note from Trump and just stop talking, stop opening his mouth.
Well, I think the problem is that we expect Helmut Marko to not have an opinion. He's always going to have an opinion. Um, you know, when the Red Bull founder, who is basically, at the top at Red Bull Racing, Dietrich Mateschitz, when he passed away, a lot of the racing was going to be falling onto Helmut Marko, who was already pretty much in charge of the motorsports program with Red Bull. Mm-hmm. And clearly the heir apparent to Helmut Marko is going to be Christian Horner. When Marko decides to hang it up and retire and just be like, all right, I'm going to stay home, you're still going to get those opinions from him. It doesn't matter whether he's there or not. You still get opinions from Bernie Ecclestone, who hasn't been involved in Formula One in, I want to say, since 2015. So, you're still going to get those opinions. You're still going to get, it's not like Michael Massey where, okay, he's out of race control in Formula One, and he's quiet because he's done. Like, he's like, all right, I moved on.
All right.
A lot of people like Helmut Marko, like Bernie Ecclestone, cannot move on. They just want to grab onto that Formula One success and just be like, hey, I'm still here. Hey, I'm still here. And they're going to keep doing that until they're in the ground. And even still, something's going to come out where they say, oh, well, this is what I thought of this driver or that driver and all that stuff.
Yeah, and everyone's entitled to their opinion. It's just like, to add insult to injury, just saying like that, when you got Christian Horner, who was being empathetic to him and completely understood how he had done so well in quali as a rookie, and that he made the car look really good, which it's not a bad car at all. We'll get down to that later on too. But to not be able to finish or even start the race, and then you got these comments coming down the road, it's kind of, it's rough for a kid. I mean, he's young. He's going to bounce back. I agree with that. But I got to applaud Anthony Hamilton for going out of his way to go console him on the walk back through the hospitality suite, because he didn't have to do that. But two, Anthony also remembers Lewis's struggles and like the struggles he felt as a father for Lewis, and only being able to do so much. So to go up there and tell him, hey man, keep your head up, you're a great racer, and the fact that this is your idol's father telling you that was pretty commendable. So yeah. I'm sure he greatly appreciated it.
Yeah, hats off to Anthony Hamilton for that. It's something that you don't really see in motorsports all that much. Typically, especially as few seats as there are in Formula One, it's a cutthroat business. Mm-hmm. You're almost not wishing success for your other drivers, because if they're having success, then you're not succeeding. So you're just kind of looking at it as, I want to beat that guy. I want to do better than him. Granted, again, it's not a driver saying that. It's a driver's father who he knows his son's not, like, Lewis isn't going to be in Formula One much longer. He's had his success. He's going to go for an 8th title. They've been talking about Lewis retiring for the last couple years. I think he might give it at least 5 more at the most. But then after that, it's an open season. And it'll be
3.
It'll be good. I think his contract is for 3 years at Ferrari, and that'll probably be when he's all right, I'm done.
Yeah.
But I'm sure he wants to still kind of mentor the next generation, the future of the sport, and kind of, keep it going, keep the growth there. And in order to do that, you have to have one, you need personalities. We don't have Daniel Ricciardo. We don't have Kimi Räikkönen. You don't have those guys who are like, just I'm here to do a job and, a fuck you attitude on the racetrack, which you have to have. Uh, so Lewis will, his dad going out to Isaac Hadjar and consoling him for I wouldn't even put the mistake on him. Wet track, paint on the it's a public road. They don't
Yeah.
have the grippy paint that you do at like Coda or at Barcelona. It's going to be slick. So it caught a lot of people out. It caught out uh, Fernando Alonso, the most tenured driver in Formula One. So
Yeah, and I mean,
it's going to
I
happen.
feel like those damn bicycle lanes. That's all that Martin could bring up was the fucking bicycle lanes, because I think those were the newest ones, and those were literally on the track line the entire time, or for a lot of the good turning spots. So, I mean,
And if I don't know if you noticed, but in places where it looked like there were no lines, they were painted over with black paint. So you're still driving over paint either way.
right. You hope it's grip paint, but most likely not.
Yeah. So they come back, coming back to the grid. Teams are allowed to bring the tents, you know, cooling fans, all the stuff that they have for a normal start. And teams that put on wets switch to inters. The track to me on TV looked wet, like looked awful. I'm sure that engineers were, it's whatever the driver feels. Engineers were looking at that like, we may need more, but they're paid to know that after a while, all that rain's going to go away. All the track's going to dry off. We're going to need these inters to kind of get through the dry parts so that way when we get to the wet, it cools the tires off. You get a little bit more grip. But, the thing that when I look at a race like that is, okay, so we just came out of, you're amped up. You're ready to race. You've been done. You haven't raced in over 98 days. Typically, people are just like itching and they get a little bit more aggressive to just be like, okay, I'm back. What can the car do? So when you have that, you're going for the formation lap. Okay, aborted start. You think, okay, it's going to ramp up a little more. It's going to get a little more exciting. And for the most part, that start was exciting. Lando got away. And then you get to, it was coming off of turn 4 or coming off of 5. Jack Doohan just loses it.
Mm-hmm.
That dreaded paint caught him out, smashed the wall, and his already impossible start just got more difficult because the media has been throwing questions to him saying, hey, Alpine just hired Franco Colapinto. He might be coming for your job, which is something that, to me, I hate that. If I'm Alpine, I'm trying to shut that down because all that's doing is that's hurting your rookie. Honestly, if I take anything from his short stint in that race, over the course of the weekend, Jack Doohan's going to be fine.
Yeah. No, that kid can race. He had a couple of races at the end of the year to finish out on Ocon's races. So he at least knows what the car feels like. So he was better prepared than a lot of them. It's just unlucky that, you run over white paint, it's wet, and it's slick as hell. And he felt the shock of the throttle and lost control and couldn't save it. So you used to have a safety car in lap 1.
It's something that, you get the safety car, you think nothing's going to happen. All of a sudden, you see Carlos Sainz in the wall. He's just,
That was shocking.
He wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. He was just, hey, I'm going to take my time, get into the turn. And he said he had a torque surge.
Yeah.
It didn't look like he was on any wet paint. or any white paint or anywhere. Um, it's just one of those things. He'll be fine. Also, Williams overall over the course of the weekend, they're the most improved team.
100%.
If Yuki doesn't get that toe in qualifying, Alex Albon starts fifth. You know, maybe Carlos starts, that one position ahead. So, in your opinion, in your short Formula One opinion, you've known Williams as back of the grid. You know, seeing which driver won't finish last.
But I've also like seen enough replays to know that hey, they used to be a dominant force.
Do you think they're back?
Back, no. Competitive, yes.
Like my thing is this.
I say that because when I say back, when I think back, I think top 3, maybe top 4. Granted, they are top 4 right now, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they have 10 points. They're top 4. However, I want to see more before I can say, yeah, they're back. I think they have a competitive car finally that's going to help them get to the top of the midfield, maybe even the bottom of the top seeds. But I still think they're a mid-card kind of car, but who knows? I mean, there's plenty of time to show, but what I've seen already, I'm thoroughly happy and impressed with. I mean, Sainz was looking good in quality as well. What was it? Albon started off. Didn't he start in 5th or something?
He started 6th.
Started 6th, yeah. So starting in the top 10 for Alex Albon, who's like one of the nicest, quietest, probably least aggressive on the field, or at least shows the least aggression. I think he's coming into his own. Finally feels like he's got a car that can get him going somewhere. Having Carlos as his teammate and the experience of that, because I mean, if you think about it, Albon's been top dog for like the last 2 years at least, and his partners have been dog shit.
Well, I mean, you have Williams is coming out of the basement, and
Yeah.
Logan Sargent is a talented race car driver. I'm pretty sure he's won F2 races. He's won at least one F2 race. I know he's podiumed. Williams as a whole is, as far down as they were. Think about it. When they sold to the people who own it now, they missed out on sponsorship money because the sponsor didn't pay. They took him to court. Then the influx of money came in from the Netflix show. And not saying that Netflix paid them, just the popularity came in during the pandemic, and then all of a sudden that prize money for the constructors just grew.
Yeah.
So you missed out on that money because you're struggling already. You're in the back. Last year kind of helped, toward the end they got higher up on that board, on that constructors title race, and so they get a little bit more cash. When you get a little more cash, that's more that you can spend on the car. That's more that you can, take pieces and parts. You get a little less wind tunnel time, but you have more room for improvement with the car. So every week from now till the end of the season in Abu Dhabi is just going to be, how can we improve the car? How can we improve the car? And the guy they have in charge over there, think about it. He was at Mercedes in the midst of their success. So he knows how to win. He knows what it takes to win. And he's got the culture at Williams heading in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, also within that safety car scenario, we also have, when everybody changed, you have 4 separate drivers, Yuki, Alonso, Alex, who we're talking about, and Lewis Hamilton, investigated for safety car infringements. So, I mean, they all got cleared by lap 20, but it's interesting to see. And if I'm not mistaken, you told me during the race that you thought that was because of spacing, correct?
It was I want to say Martin Brundle said it, that it was due to the spacing they had to the car in front. You're supposed to keep at least 10 car lengths of distance to the car in front of you. It's wet, spray is everywhere. These cars don't have fenders to keep everything in.
Mhm.
So you set a gap behind in front of you just so that you can see, so that you can have some kind of, you know, okay, wait, I'm gonna, like, when you're running at 120, 130 miles an hour, you're getting all that spray. You can't see anything. You get up to
Yeah.
170, then it's really blinding. So when you're under the safety car and you're going maybe 80, 90 at times, you're probably going over 110 going into certain areas. You need that space so that way you can kind of relax. You can get the car to the next start and you're not smashing the car during the safety car. So I think that's why the stewards kind of, they looked at it and they, the teams probably pled their case, and they're just like, look, we'll give you a break now, but just be on top of your game the next time later in the season, because these drivers are still learning the cars.
Yeah.
You know,
And I
uh,
mean, if I don't know if you remember seeing, they were showing someone's helmet camera, and holy crap, like you could just see nothing but blurry water on the visor. And I'm like,
you barely see the rain lights
yeah,
on
the
the
car ahead.
uprights for the wing and the rain light in the back. So it just goes to show how much, like, how good these athletes are in these cars, to see that through the rain and be able to make out, okay, there's a car there, I need to make sure that I'm not going to hit it, I got to avoid it, get out of the spray a little bit, because it's more than just driving on the highway. The thing that kind of bugs me a little bit more and more as I get older, and I kind of, it's whatever, but when people say race car drivers are not athletes, it's like, okay, what do you think they do?
Yeah.
They're not just sitting in a car and driving like they're going to the store or going down the interstate. They're going at 180, 190 miles an hour, and then having to stop as late as possible to make a corner where they feel upwards to 5 Gs in their neck.
Yeah.
So, like, you struggle driving in the rain going 20. They're going a buck 20.
Mm-hmm.
So,
No, I fully agree. Speaking
it's,
of driving under high speeds, let's fast forward to lap 12.
this befuddled me.
I knew they were going to freak out.
This confused me because when you're in the rain,
I'm for the chaos.
you don't have grip. So why are we allowing DRS when they don't have grip?
I was surprised when I saw it activated. I think Martin Brundle was too. I know you is sure were losing your mind, but
I mean,
maybe they felt the track was dry enough to enable it. I will say, aside from the safety cars, they didn't disable it either. So,
but the thing that bothers me,
it was
is
class 1 rain too, which is considered drizzle.
it doesn't matter if it's dogs spitting on the ground. When you have rules to save these drivers from themselves.
True.
Let me paint a picture for you. Japan, 2014.
I know exactly where you're going.
Driver goes off the track because it's wet. Granted, it was during a typhoon. It was before a typhoon. So we deal with hurricanes. That's the closest you're going to get to a typhoon. We know when the rains start coming in, those kind of rain, like the tropical rain that you get from a hurricane, where it's just a sheet. That's what they were driving in. So
in 2017.
2014.
14, excuse me.
So, you have that happen. Driver goes off. Driver then goes off in the same spot, hits a safety vehicle. It ends up killing him a year later because he was in the hospital that whole year. He didn't go home. So why is this allowed? Why is this a thing that was okay? And I haven't seen anything to say why they allowed DRS in the wet. They never do that. The track has to be dry. There has to be a full dry line on the track for them to even think about it. And yes, there were aspects of the track that when the cars ran on it, you didn't see a spray. That doesn't mean the track is dry.
Well, it makes
You
me
still-
wonder if at the end of the race, did the constructors or the post race meetings and all that, did they bring that up to the stewards?
we won't know until at least Thursday.
Yeah,
Um,
'cause
unless
I
unless
haven't
I
seen
miss something,
anything.
unless I missed something in the post race show, I didn't hear any reason of why DRS was allowed. What prompted that decision?
Mhm.
And to me, again, I don't make the big bucks that the Formula One does, and I wasn't there. But if there's any sense of danger that they're adding by doing some of the stuff they're doing, it has to stop. I feel like we're starting to get to that point where in racing, you start to just become complacent with how safe the sport is. The sport's still dangerous.
Oh,
You know,
extremely
it
dangerous.
takes. They haven't had a death in Formula One. They're not counting. They didn't count Jules Bianchi for some reason, but like death in a race, they haven't had one since 1994 with Ayrton Senna.
You think they didn't count it because it was a red flag?
No, they didn't count it because he died a year later. They still mention that his injuries brought upon his death,
Yeah.
but then you have Antoine Hubert who dies in Spa. You had another driver a couple within the last 2 years, same track, died at Spa.
Mhm.
So this sport still shows that it is innately dangerous. Don't do stuff to add to that danger. Like the other one was the tow vehicles.
Yeah.
You saw the onboard, and Martin Brundle even brought it up, how wild it was to see. You see, through the 910 complex where it's that quick left, quick right, that Lando is, the safety car had to take the shortcut through 10. Lando's running side by side with the tow truck in 10.
As
where
it's driving.
as it's driving, where cars lose control. Those recovery vehicles should be stopped when Formula One cars are coming through. You have them slow down till they get past the vehicle and then go at full speed and then get off the track.
Yeah, I was confused as to why they didn't just red flag it with, I think it was Alonso's spin out on lap 34, because he was in a spot where literally they had to drive past it. There was no getting away from it. So why would it not stop? And I know I'm getting ahead of the race, but we're talking about safety car situations and tow trucks.
So
it doesn't make sense there.
You try not to throw the red flag. It's there if you need it. And it's typically used if it's going to be an extended period, if the Tech Pro barriers need to be rebuilt, if an Armco barrier needs to be fixed, if there's fluid all over the track, if there's shards of carbon fiber everywhere.
Well, I mean, the wall would have had to be fixed because it was one of the flexible ones, if I'm not mistaken, but also it's on the track and you still have to get this tow truck down the road or back it up so it can get back into the utility lane.
So remember Jack Doohan's crash?
Yeah.
It was the same spot. Never had trouble. In fact, when you saw the medical vehicle, it was something that I think the FIA put up on their socials, or it was Burt Mylander, one of them. Somebody put it up and that they noticed. So you have Jack Doohan's car here, and then behind it, you have the medical vehicle parked like this, so that it gave them a wide berth to be able to work, to basically tell all the race cars, like, just stay in your line beyond the crash, and then you have full freedom of the track.
Was that a medical vehicle or the backup safety car?
That was the medical vehicle. It's
okay.
the SUV Aston Martin is the medical vehicle. I don't know what vehicle they use for the I don't know what vehicle they use for Mercedes when they have the safety car, but it's typically an SUV.
I know it's one of their coupes because they always talk about it being a 2-seater and you have to have both people in there to add the extra weight. when you're doing those high speed around the bends to keep them moving. So,
Yes.
so while under a DRS, we're going to backtrack a little bit and navigate. We had a couple of small incidences. Lap 16, Kimmy spun out on his lap, I think on the wet paint as well.
He went
He
wide
saved
off of, I can't remember the turn.
I don't remember the turn either.
I'm pulling I have the track map right here. It was off of 4. Oh no, it was off of 3. Going into 4. Comes off of 3. It brings him out wide on the exit. He cuts out wide for the entry to 4 to get the most speed at the apex. Clipped the grass. It brought him around. Thankfully, there was a lot of escape road. Took that.
Yeah.
And just went about his day. And that was really the only problem Kimmy had all day. You know, they tried to get him for unsafe release in pit road. That got rescinded. But
also
overall,
behind, besides him telling his engineer he's just trying not to die. I remember that one. I was like, you ain't kidding, bud.
Yeah, he's going to be really good this year. I'm excited to see how he's going to do when the track is dry and it's a race. As of right now, we're recording the Tuesday after the race. Weather calls for a dry race this weekend, which will be good. I should say race is because it's a sprint weekend. But he's a phenomenal talent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not going to put him as the next Max Verstappen yet, like Toto has said, but you know, he's up there. He's going to be fantastic to watch, and I cannot wait to see what he does in that car. You know, fast forward. So back to the race. Fast forward to
the next lap.
Very next lap. Max is in second. He's got Oscar Piastri kind of behind him, and you see it when he's entering the corner.
He's going too fast, too deep.
His left side front tire locks up, and it just brings him straight. And so Oscar just says, "Okay, I'll take that spot," and it's just a free pass. Just okay, here we go. And Piastri was fast. He was fast all weekend. It being his home race, you know, he wants to break that Australian curse. No Australian has podiumed since the Australian Grand Prix has been a Formula One event. Mm-hmm. And Daniel Ricciardo did it. I forget what year, but he got disqualified. So before anybody says, well, what about Daniel Ricciardo? No, he got disqualified. He doesn't count. So he has a lot of pressure on him. He's catching Lando hand over fist. And
I think they're the best driver team right now.
Easily.
Yeah.
But they also have the best car. So,
but last year, I mean, they were struggling. They were struggling, you know, between their personalities and driving styles, like competing against each other, especially when they started getting the competitive upgrades. So I think they finally found, you know, the papaya rules, whatever you want to call it, finally have that consistency of, okay, we know our defined roles. We know where we're going. I think this year was, you know, a fresh slate where, hey, you're on even ground. We're going to, when we get to a spot where we can, you can race, but it's still about the team in the end. I think once you got those two young guns kind of recognizing, hey, it's not just about you. Yes, we're going to push you, but it's not just about you. We're focused on the constructors too. I think once that happened last year, I think they were ready to go, and it showed this weekend. It's a shame Oscar didn't finish in second, but.
Well, what'll happen is with, you know, they both want to win.
Yeah.
And you can't blame them. They want success just on their own. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Zach Brown does a really good job of trying to tell him, like, look, go for your success. But remember, at the end of the day, we're a team.
Yeah.
We're not single. Like, you're going to need your teammate to help you win the championship, whatever way that falls.
Exactly what Red Bull doesn't have.
Right. Which we'll get to them in a second. But Piastri, to me, he's a fast enough driver. I mean, it shows that they locked both Lando and Oscar up for a good bit. You know, you don't have long contracts in Formula One. Typically, it's like a 2-year deal, 3-year deal, just because of, I mean, look at how many rookies we have this year. Last year, nobody changed.
Yeah.
Like nobody, like you didn't lose any drivers out of Formula One. So you kind of have that, you create that stack up of talent behind to be like, hey, I want to get in. Hey, I want to get in. So for McLaren to have two drivers seamed up for a couple years is a testament to how good Lando and Oscar are.
And how much they're investing in them.
Yes. And I mean, it shows. Like, look how good they were last year.
Yeah.
Once they got that upgrade that pushed them over the edge, then it's like, hey, come after us. Come get us. Now, the thing I will say is the directive to the teams that, there's certain things like the wings can't flex a certain amount. You can't have a certain gap between the, the end of the wing to the part of the wing that goes up for DRS.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to affect McLaren going down? Is that going to slow them down a bit? Is that going to be their kryptonite for the remainder of the season?
It'll be interesting to see, because in China, like for Australia, they were allowing, that 2 mil, the little gap. For China, they're pushing up the time frame, because I think it was supposed to be Spain or something. They're pushing up, and they're like, you know what? Everyone has to be within 0.5 mils. But I did see something after I told you that they will, if there's like, they'll give a little 0.25 mil difference. And I mean, it sounds negligible, but I mean, that's still a lot of airflow.
You'll have a margin for error, because typically your margin of error, it would have been that 0.5 mil.
Yeah. But because it was such short notice, they're allowing a 0.25 mil difference. But I mean, they're still wanting them to be at 0.5. So, I mean, and all that is just readjusting the wings. So
it's strengthening them.
Yeah.
Because if you remember last year, when McLaren would drive down the straights, the end of their wing would flap up to allow more air. And, that people saw that on TV. That's why they have those dots if you look at the rear wing, you'll see the top, like a sponsor, like Haas's Toyota Gazoo Racing. You'll see these black dots on the white wing to know, okay, we're seeing the inflection. You need to calm that down.
Right. Well, it's interesting to me, because with DRS going away next year, will that be allowed again? And if it will, what's the point in being so strict right now?
Well, you still have to fall within the rules.
I agree.
Racing is all about, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Successful race teams live in the gray area, but live enough in the gray area that they're in the breaking the rules, and you just don't see it. Not that it's not Formula One related, but like NASCAR, you go in there, you trick your car out 10 ways, you hope they catch those 2 and miss these 8.
Yeah.
You do something so ridiculous that they'll catch this so that they miss this. And I think a little bit of Formula One is a little bit of that too, where we're going to trick this a little bit so that way maybe you'll miss that. One thing that I'm interested to see is they're allowing vent holes to go to the drivers during hot races. Are the teams going to position those in a way that it's almost like I think it was called the F duct, where you would see drivers, it was like the 2009, 2010, where you'd see drivers coming off the corner and then they would put their hand off the wheel, and it would basically be them covering a hole, and it would make them go a little bit faster because it makes the car slick. Because you can't air can't go through, so it's just packed in and just going over and make the car more slick in the air. So I'm wondering if we're going to see that again with these cooling vents. Like, are they going to pick their leg up to like close it off or something?
It'd be interesting to see, because I know in Singapore they're going to want to have those vents.
Yeah, they're going to want more than that.
Yeah, they're going to want AC.
Yeah. So, after Max has his almost excursion, we start to notice that Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton have a lot of room for improvement in their communication.
You don't say.
Like
Ricardo, shut the fuck up, bro.
he, so he's probably used to telling whatever driver he has, like, hey, these are all the information you need. You know, you need to do this, you need to do this. And maybe that's what they are. You're talking to a 7-time champion. Know who you're talking. And I get it. There may be things that they have at Ferrari that they don't have at Mercedes. I know one
what
thing.
K1 is. I really want to know what K1
It's basically
is.
there. It's
Was it the push mode?
on the steering wheel. You'll see a button that says K1, and they hit that button. That's their overtake button.
Okay. That's what I figured it was.
When you look at a Formula One wheel, there will be like buttons that are labeled, and so they'll just say like, you know, this is what you have. It's like kinetic energy, like it used to be KERS, which is kinetic energy recovery system. Well, now they just do energy recovery system, so there's no kinetic about it.
Yeah.
So it was just something that, you know, hey, like, get going. And, you know, Lewis just coming back like, all right, I got it, leave me to it. His leave me to it is Kimi Räikkönen's just leave me alone, I know what to do.
Yeah.
He said it just nicer. And every time he said it, I'm like, all right, Kimi, calm down. All right, Räikkönen. And I think if Lewis was more blunt and wasn't like, okay, leave me to it. If he just says, leave me alone, I know what I'm doing. That's it. He was just he probably seemed to his engineer like, oh well, I mean, you know, I'll just remind him again.
But at the same time, like Lewis, I sometimes feel Lewis feels like he has to be that calmer voice. And I don't want to put race into it, but I know he's brought a lot of that into Formula One, where it's like, you know, he's one of the first black men to be world champions, or he is the first black man to be a world champion, and he's got all that pressure. And then you got to be like, well, the one time he, you know, freaks out on somebody.
Well, I don't think it's that, because he's freaked out on people all the time. You know, the difference is when he does his freak out, it's, you know, like perfect example at the end of the race. He's sitting there going like, why did we do that, guys? That was bad. That's how he does it. He questions, and he's respectful, and you know, that's why I tip my cap to him. He's very respectful when in moments where, you know, drivers should be like, what the fuck, guys? Like, why are we doing this? This is so stupid.
Oh, after the second call, I was like, Ricardo, shut the fuck up, dude. Let him run his race.
But at the same time, like, you can't blame him for doing his job. Like,
no, you can't.
That's what he's paid to do. What needs to happen is
know your audience.
But what needs to happen is, so this happened, like, I'm doing this based off of podcasts I've heard with people involved in motorsports. So the easiest one I have is NASCAR, because there's a spotters podcast. And they'll sit there and they'll talk about, like, some of the things we do is we sit down with our drivers and we talk about, okay, in this moment, this is what I'm going to tell you. The driver will sit there and go, I need to hear X, Y, and Z.
Right.
They probably have talked about that. Like, hey, when this is happening, I like knowing this. But they've never had the real world racing situation. They've had sim work. They've had testing. That's it. They've had practice. They've had qualifying. Nothing can compare to live racing. And that's the problem. They don't have enough races under their belt to sit there and go, okay, I know what he needs to hear at this moment. So you're going to have that. You're going to have the back and forth where, you know, I'm going to overtell you stuff to know, okay, where's my limit?
Yeah.
You have to start that way, because if you don't tell him enough, then he's going to be bugging for more information, and you'll be like, well, I don't know what else information I need to give you. If you tell him more to start, you can fine tune. Okay, he wants to hear this, he wants to hear that, he doesn't want to hear this. And I'm sure Ricardo
He's
Adami
had
has talked
3 months to talk to him though, and figure out what he wants.
you
I feel like
cannot,
it should have been squared away by then.
but you cannot. It's not the same. Like you and I talking here, right? Let's
Right.
say you're you're racing and I'm your spotter. I can sit here and tell you what I'm going to tell you, and you could sit there and tell me what you want me to hear, or you want to hear from me.
Mhm.
Until we go to a racetrack and have the scenarios happen in real time, we don't know how we're going to talk to each other. You know, I would tell you like,
I don't know.
"Hey, this is
I still
happening."
struggle to believe that they haven't talked about this. Or, I mean, I feel like Ricardo could have taken notes. Had 3 months to work with Lewis and square
But
these
think of
things away.
the drivers he's had: Sebastian Vettel, Carlos Sainz. Um, you know, the list goes on of
Yeah.
drivers who are good drivers but want information. So, Lewis is still trying to learn the car. So
Mhm.
maybe Ricardo's telling him this to be like, "Hey, I'm telling you this because you may not know this part of the car." But Lewis is probably saying, "Hey, I know this. I need to focus on something else. I need something else to you to tell me some more information on something else, like maybe a brake bias, or an engine map setting, something like that." So I don't. I understand where he's coming from, and still telling him now after the third time, like, "Hey man, like he gets it."
Yeah. I mean, how many times can you tell him K1's available? We know K1's available.
It's
He
but
knows how to use the overtake button.
it's one of those things where it's like he probably had two drivers be like, "Hey, when I have it available, if you because he could see when he uses it, he probably saw Lewis not use it and go, oh, let me remind him, hey, just a heads up, you have this."
Yeah.
And then he might not have heard him say, because when you're hearing it on the TV, they're isolating the radio and you're not hearing the
The
cars.
car. Yeah.
So he probably had cars going by when he said it, or when Lewis responded and goes, "Oh, he asked me to say it again." Hits the button. Okay, remember K1's available, and then that's when he said it. Hey, I said I got it. He's like, okay.
I mean, that's hopeful thinking. I don't necessarily agree with it, but in this scenario, but it's
When you,
possible.
I can tell you this: when you go to a racetrack, no matter what type of car that makes about 1,000 horsepower, it goes.
Oh, it's gonna be loud as shit, and I have no doubts of that. But I mean, they have headsets more sophisticated than ours on the pit wall that are noise canceling. Lewis has them directly in his ear. I don't feel
Plus, it
I
also
don't
depends.
agree
You
that
know,
Ricardo didn't hear him.
plus, it also depends on, you know, did it come fully through without feedback?
It's possible.
They'll get it figured out,
They will.
hopefully, because Ferrari strategy struck hard this race.
Well, it showed. They're
You
behind
know,
Kick Sauber in the points.
which is wild because
That's fucking
Sauber came from the test the worst car.
yeah. And you
But
said they came with some upgrades. Which ones
yeah,
did they
I
have?
saw they had the front wing upgrade and a side pod upgrade, which
They
I
put
guess
side
did the
pods on a
job.
kick.
Yeah. Well, it's not like the podless side pods that Mercedes tried for years that
Yeah.
completely fell flat.
Which, going back to last episode, I relooked at I looked at the Red Bulls a little bit closer. They do have the side pods. They're just lower profile and hidden within the paint scheme.
So what they utilize is they have cooling up by the driver's head also.
Yeah.
Like just above the head, there's two vents right here. And then they had where it wasn't so much a side pod where you saw like,
Like vents. No,
the vent,
they're
it's completely open almost.
yeah. It's almost kind of like shades where they're kind of just laying on top of each other but still separated.
Yeah.
It was interesting to see. and that's how it got me without knowing it.
So you have drivers start to think like, oh, is this the time to switch? Is this the time to switch? I do remember I watched Formula
We're
One
talking
put
about
out
tires.
Radio Rewind, where they were talking to Alonso saying like, hey, pretty soon we're going to switch to slicks. And he's like, yep, I feel good about that. And then he wrecks. And pretty bad. Like
Lap 34, yeah.
It tore the car up. He was fine.
What was it, turn 6, I believe?
It was coming. Yes, it was coming out of turn 6. He went a little too far over the
gravel,
curb.
right? Yeah.
No, he went. It was the paint. He went a little too far over the curb. Car just spun around on him, and he eventually just found the wall.
Yeah.
So
it looked brutal.
You have the safety car there. They switched to slicks, and the whole time under the safety car, you're hearing, "Hey, rain's coming. It's going to be in."
I was like, you couldn't wait like 30 seconds.
And it's like, there's going to be rain. It's going to come at lap 45. And one of them said, like, it's for one lap. I'm like, yeah, okay. It's for one lap if it's on lap 58, not 45. So
57, they lost a lap
because of the aborted start.
Mm-hmm.
So they're originally supposed to have 58 laps. And can you tell me why they do that?
Oh, because fuel.
Yes, they only put so much fuel, and you can't refuel once you're on the grid.
And if I heard correctly, they don't refuel. They don't fill it up completely either.
No, you can run less. You have a maximum you're supposed to run, but you run it as light as possible.
Right. Is there a minimum that they have to run? I mean, obviously enough to get to the fucking end.
Enough to get to the finish and have a gallon left over or liter left over.
Only a liter.
It can't. Excuse me. It's not only a liter. You have to have at least a liter.
At least a liter.
Yeah. So if your sport is basically, if weight is one of the things you rely on to be fast, you're going to shed as much weight as possible. So you're going to run as light as possible.
A gallon of water is 8 pounds, and gasoline's heavier than water. So you can only, I have a rough guess, say 10 pounds per gallon, which is 3.8 liters.
There's a formula there where it says it, and I don't remember what it is.
Yeah.
So they take off, running on slicks, sliding everywhere still, and then
stupid.
Here comes the rain. And it was crazy hearing. So every team has their own radar system, and teams will hire spotters to go around the track to be like, "Hey, I have rain here. Hey, I don't have rain there." Mm-hmm. To know, this is how heavy it's going to be. This is how light it's going to be. And for the FIA has classes of what rain it'll be, and the FIA will tell the drivers like, Class 1 rain, Class 2 rain.
Well, with the radar system, everyone buys at least the base model because all the constructors pay for it.
They have rain. They can tell you rain to the minute.
Yeah.
It is going to rain in 2 minutes. It is going to rain in 4 minutes.
But if I'm not mistaken, so everyone chips in to buy the base model, but you can put more money in to buy an upgraded version.
No, you buy the top of the line you can get.
Right, but I mean, all the constructors as a whole buy that base model.
I think they have their own stuff. Like they look at their own models because
I thought I heard something or read something about that they all share all 10 this year, 11 next year constructors share the cost of the base model, and then if you can afford it or want to pay for more.
Like you have things that you can pay for on your stuff to see what it is.
To see more or to get upgraded parts, but everyone buys the base models.
This should tell you something because McLaren told Lando, "Hey, this is going to last for a lap." Mm-hmm. Mercedes was telling George it's going to be 2 laps. Ferrari told Lewis it was going to be 1 lap. Then I want to say it was McLaren told Lando, "Hey, it's going to rain, and it's going to rain significantly." for about 2 laps, and I think Lando questioned it, and he basically gave the "is it an A or B" answer, and you just say yes because you're
Yeah.
not confident. He gave him like a zero confidence answer going into that green flag, and getting to lap 44 when it started raining, you're seeing the McLarens just take off, and thankfully they had enough of a gap where they washed out onto the gravel. Lando saved it a little sooner than Oscar did. Oscar got back on track and just spun it into 13,
Yeah.
almost
Into the grass.
getting stuck in the grass. And I thought he was stuck. I'm like, oh no, his race is over.
I thought so too. I
But
felt so
then
bad for him.
a tweet that was brought up, which was hilarious to me, was he went to Jeremy Clarkson's farm and learned to reverse out to get unstuck if he's stuck, which in a sense is the
Martin
correct way to
Brundle
do
even
it.
said to do.
Yeah. Use your, put it in reverse and use it as a front wheel drive car to pull you out.
Yeah.
As opposed to pushing all the weight. So he was able to get out, eventually got to the pits, went a lap down.
Got a huge cheer from the crowd.
Max took the lead over when they both pit, and I don't think if Max would have pitted, it would have mattered. They held him out a little bit longer. I get it. You try to, hey, it's not going to rain that long. It's not going to rain that long. It rains a little longer than people thought, and it jacked up the strategy for him. And he finally pit. I think they made the decision when he came out of 13, like box now.
Yeah, they waited very last minute for it.
And then it sucks for Lewis and Charles because if they would have held out, if the race would have ended if they would have known the race was going to end under a safety car, you don't pit, you just survive. But
there were too many laps left.
Their stuff was saying 1 lap, and it boned them.
But even so, I mean, what was it? McLaren said it was going to be a class 2 or 3, which is light rain.
Ferrari told Charles a class 3, and he goes, "That's a lot."
Yeah,
and he was on slicks, and he's like,
He should have told them, "No, I'm coming in for inners." Like at some point, you have to, as a driver, know what's best for you. And damn the strategy, because let's be honest, Ferrari's strategy is not always the best. I don't know what monkey's pulling the strings, but they're not firing on all cylinders at the factory there. Their strategy group needs a lot of revamping, in my opinion.
Ferrari'd.
Yep. And they got Ferrari'd. Because now you have Kick Saba, one of the worst teams.
I guarantee you that's going to right the ship next week.
It will. It absolutely will. I just find it hilarious seeing that Ferrari's in 7th and behind Kick Saba and Williams.
It's going to be a quick fix after China.
I agree.
So end of the race, they get the green flag. I think they had 4 laps under green to end the race, or 3, and Lando just took care of business. He kept Max in his.
You're forgetting something.
What am I forgetting?
Lap 47.
Bortoletto and
Bortoletto. I keep saying Bortoletto.
So Bortoletto actually he had a brake failure.
Is that what happened?
That's what caused his trouble.
Wasn't he complaining at the beginning of the race about his brake being loose? Like the pedal felt loose?
The pedal felt soft. So when you hit the brake, you shouldn't.
It shouldn't go down. Like it should ease.
Your brake pedal.
Touch.
Your brake pedal better be stiff as fuck.
Right.
You almost have to
touch it and you almost die.
You have to almost put your foot through the floor to get the brakes to push.
Okay.
Like in our cars, we have brake boosters that kind of help. Like,
yeah,
it allows our brake pedal to be soft enough to where we can push it, but it pushes the fluid through to really grab the brake disc. They don't have brake boosters in that car, so they have to like mash the shit out of that to get it to stop.
Mm-hmm.
His was just, there was a lot of travel in it. So that already makes you uneasy as a driver. because you're not getting the stopping force that you should get. So when you come off the corner, you're trying to hurry up and turn it and get it all the way, hits the wall, slides off the escape road on 13. Nothing he could do.
No.
Uh, Liam, on the other hand, I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, was he still on slicks, or had he been on inters to that point?
I think he might have been on slicks coming in for getting ready to come in for those, because didn't he wreck at like turn 13 or something?
He wrecked at 2.
At 2.
He basically wrecked
so
at
he
the
missed
same
the
spot.
pit. They didn't pull him in. That's what it was.
I'm looking it up now just to be safe.
If I'm not mistaken. I think they didn't pull him in.
He spun, and that doesn't help. That doesn't help things when you need all the points you can, and your teammate is Max Verstappen.
Right, and I feel
he was still on slicks. You're right.
I feel like Liam was. He's still got a ways to go to prove himself. Don't get me wrong, but and in the dry, he runs well. I mean, we saw that last season, at the end of last season, and he's hungry for it. The problem is, I don't think he's got the experience or the composure for when it rains, and it's going to rain at least 2 more times this year.
Well, in my opinion, I think it's a lot to do with the setup of the car. That car is more set up for Max's driving style, which we could get into on an off week. We'll talk about the driving style of Max and how the cars are set up toward, like, their number one driver has more input on the setup. So, because Daniel's, when Daniel left, Pierre struggled, Alex struggled. Basically seat 2 in Red Bull is like the most difficult job in Formula One.
100%.
So, but we'll get into that.
Do you think that's where McLaren's got a little bit more success, because Lando and Piastri's driving style is similar?
I would say so. They probably like similar things about a car, like how it handles in the turns, the brake pressure, the aero, all that stuff.
Yeah, because Max has a very aggressive style, which I thought Liam does as well. And maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, but he just did not look comfortable at all this weekend.
Max is just a different beast.
100%. And that's where Red Bull is actually screwing themselves, because they're so focused on the number one driver, whereas McLaren has, while yes, last season I keep bringing it up, Lando is the number one driver. They also recognize, hey, there was a time when Piastri was doing, like, one race Piastri was doing better, so they switched over to that. But they, like you said, they have similar driving styles, so the car is pretty equal to them. And I think that's honestly one of the best strategies with building the car, is you need people that drive similarly, so you don't have to make too many changes and adjustments. Because Checo, you could just see he was rarely comfortable in the RB19.
The RB19 it was the RB20 that he was struggling.
Oh, was it
the 19? The 19 he got wins, and he was, he finished second in the drivers' championship that year.
Right.
But again, we'll get into it in future episodes about
100%.
Red Bull and all of those struggles that second drivers have in that seat. And I mean, it's been a struggle since Kvyat was in the car and all of that. Mm-hmm. So back to the race. Max fought valiantly to get that spot back, to get the win. It wasn't enough for him to beat Lando, which I love the podium. They showed, like, first podium of 2025. It's like, yeah, you're the first race of 2025.
Yeah.
So you had Lando in first, Max in second, George in third, and just kind of going down the rest of the finishing order. Kimi Antonelli fourth after having received a 5-second penalty. It was rescinded. He got his spot back. Yeah. Alex Albon in fifth, followed by Lance Stroll. Nico Hülkenberg, who, like we said, Ferrari was outscored by Kick Sauber. The 6 points came from Nico. Charles Leclerc, Oscar Piastri with a amazing move into 9 and 10, passing Lewis on the outside of 9. Lewis in 10th, and then outside the points you had Pierre Gasly, Yuki Tsunoda, Esteban Ocon, and for having the weekend he had, Ali Behrman to finish the race is what you want to see out of him with Haas. Finish the race, no damage.
Yeah.
And then the drivers not classified in the race, Liam Lawson, Bortoleto, Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz, Jack Doohan, and Isaac Hadjar. Anything that sticks out at you aside from Kick Sauber beating Ferrari?
33% of the rookies survived. That's one of them. I almost had my podium correct until Piastri fucked it, and it's sad, but he just couldn't let me have a win.
I will say that I had the same manufacturer, the same constructor finishing third and fourth. I just had the wrong one finishing third and fourth.
Mm-hmm.
Lance Stroll finishing sixth. That's a good result for him. He needs to turn it on this year.
Turn what on? His brain or the car? Because he doesn't know how to do either.
He has talent. He just needs to use it. He needs to stop making dumb mistakes.
Use your mirrors.
Yes, just drive. Just drive the car. That's all he's got to worry about.
My problem though is that because he finished sixth in this race, he's gonna have a chip on his shoulder, thinking that he's actually good.
He needs that though. He needs that.
I don't disagree, but it needs to be real, authentic.
Because here's the situation. Fernando Alonso, we don't know when he's going to retire. He's been racing since the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have, he's going to be out of the seat at some point soon. Then you have, Stroll. If he continues to struggle, is his dad going to still let him drive if he's not doing well? So
Probably.
He still has to produce. Who do you have waiting in the wings? Aston Martin. We don't. Who's their reserve driver? Do you know?
I did, and I forgot. Isn't it one of the F2 champions, past champions?
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, you look that up.
They have Adrian Newey signed as their.
But he's working on the 26 car.
But still, he's gonna do the improvements on this car.
He will. He absolutely will, and there's going to be a lot of need for improvements. I don't want to say pleasantly surprised, but because I'm not a fan of this constructor group, but Mercedes was competitive, and it was nice to see again. I don't know. We know how I feel about the latte boy, but Kimi looked good, and I'm happy with that. And I'll fully support Kimi because he's young, he's ambitious, he's Italian, he wants to win. I mean, the kid looked good on the field, in the worst, not the worst, but some of the worst conditions lately, and he held his own. The highlight of Ferrari was the words of wisdom.
Oh yeah,
that was great.
That should go on a T-shirt, and it should be a list of all the things that Ferrari has said. That it's well, no shit.
I'm almost positive it's already a meme, so it's going to be a T-shirt soon, if not already.
So
that should be our first merch.
To answer our question, or to answer the question, Aston Martin has two reserve drivers that alternate this year. Felipe Drugovich, who won the Formula 2 championship in 2022, and he's raced, or he's had a couple practice sessions in the car and has been able to learn Formula 1. And the other driver is Stoffel Van Dorn, who had a 2-year stint with McLaren in 2017 and 2018, and he's raced in World Endurance Championship and Formula E, and he was a Formula E champion. So he's a good. They have talent as a reserves, looking to become full-time drivers. But it'll be interesting to see when Mercedes leaves, what's going to happen when Honda takes over.
Yeah,
as the engine supplier.
Do you feel that they have two reserve drivers because one, they're acutely aware of Alonso having a limited time frame, and the possibility of if Lance doesn't do well this year, he's going to get dropped, and they'll have a complete driver change?
No, because if you look at Formula One teams, down the grid, there's a couple that have more than one. Mercedes has one, it's Valtteri. They do that so that way when they get to having to fulfill their rookie standards for practice, they're already in place. Right. I mean, Alpine has 4: Franco Colapinto, Ryo Hirakawa, Paul Aaron, and Kushmani, 2 of which I think still race in F2.
Yeah, I was about to say that are they part of the junior league or the junior driving group?
I think so. But then you also have Ferrari has 2. They have Joe Guan Yu moved over from Sauber to be their reserve driver at Ferrari, and Antonio Giovinazzi is back as their reserve driver. So, you know, it just depends on the team. You know, they have a young drivers program. They're going to put them in just to kind of, or if some teams have a deal where they share reserve drivers. So you might see, you know, Sauber might say like, look, we need to borrow Giovinazzi for a weekend. Okay, cool. Here you go. And they'll do that.
Yeah.
So I think that was a good recap of the first race. I'm excited for this weekend. It's another late one for us here in the States. It's in China, just to kind of go over what the schedule will be like in China this weekend. It's going to be nice.
Yeah.
So you have FP1 Friday at 10:30 Central. All these times are Central times because that's what they show me. At 10:30 Central FP1, sprint qualifying at 2:30 in the morning, Saturday morning. Then Saturday night at 10, you have the sprint race. So pretty normal time, 10 p.m. And then qualifying at 2 a.m. on, I might have my days wrong. The 22nd.
No, I think you're right.
No, the 20th is
22nd Saturday.
Okay, then yeah. So, no, that's not right. Here's where we argue about the calendar. Today's the 18th. 19th is Wednesday. Okay, Thursday, FP1 at 10:30. Friday, sprint qualifying at 2:30 in the morning, and then the sprint race at 10 o'clock. Qualifying at 2 a.m. on Saturday, and then at 2 a.m. on Sunday is the race. So we have 4 days of Formula One this week, technically.
Yes, because that will be Sunday evening, afternoon, whatever for them. So.
Yes. Track time for them, just so that you're aware, race is at 3 o'clock.
As usual.
And it's 2 a.m. here. So they're 13 hours ahead, 13 hours ahead.
Isn't there only like 1 or 2 races where it's like a 2 o'clock start?
It's there, China. I think it's just there. I think it's China and Japan.
No, China's 3 o'clock.
China, Japan,
I'm talking local
Australia
time starts.
Oh, that are 3 o'clock? I have no idea.
Yeah, I thought there were a couple last year where there was 2 o'clock starts.
I know there's a few night races coming up.
Not talking night races. Sorry, I wanted to clarify. Night races, day races.
Yeah, no, they typically start at like 3 o'clock because they get like the sunset at like 5 ish when they get to post daylight savings.
All right.
I think this is a good place to end.
Yep.
Formula One is back, and it is back with a vengeance. We will see y'all soon. It'll probably be Saturday after qualifying so that we can preview the race for the 2025 Heineken Chinese Grand Prix. It's been great. That was Rob. This is Joey signing off this week. Peace.